The sound that haunted Folsom Prison the most was not screaming, it was silence. Heavy, crushing silence that fell after the metal doors slammed shut. For the men inside, that sound meant the outside world was gone. No mercy, no escape, only survival. When Folsom Prison opened its gates in 1880, California officials promised safety and order. What they created instead was a place built on punishment, fear, and hard stone. The prison was carved from granite, much of it cut by the very inmates who would later be locked behind its walls. Every block, every cell, every narrow hallway carried the weight of forced labor and broken men. Most prisoners arrived already hardened by crime. Murderers, armed robbers, men who had lived by violence long before they saw prison bars. But Folsom changed them. Guards ruled with iron discipline. Silence was enforced. Talking out of turn could mean beatings or isolation. Inmates learned quickly that weakness invited pain. Executions were part of daily reality. In the early years, death sentences were carried out openly, sometimes within earshot of other inmates. Men listened as the state ended lives just a few corridors away. That knowledge settled deep into the prison's bones. At night, prisoners whispered about who would be next. Violence inside the walls was constant. Stabbings broke out during meals. Fights erupted in workyards. Guards responded fast and hard. Batons swung. Rifles were raised. Order was restored, but the cost was blood. Some inmates never made it back to their cells. Not all danger came from guards. Prisoners formed alliances to survive. Older inmates controlled younger ones. Protection came at a price. Those who refused often paid with their lives. This hidden system turned cell blocks into battlegrounds where fear ruled more than law. By the early 1900s, Folsom's reputation spread across the country. Judges said its name as a threat. Inmates feared transfers there more than longer sentences elsewhere. To be sent to Folsom meant entering a place where the rules were written in pain. Then came the riots. Overcrowding pushed the prison to its limit. Cells meant for one man held two. Tension snapped. One riot left guards injured and inmates dead. Another ended with armed patrols flooding the yard. Each uprising reinforced Folsom's image as a place always one step away from disaster. By the time the public heard about Folsom, it was already infamous. Long before music or cameras arrived, the prison had earned its fear the hard way through real crimes, real punishment, and real suffering. And the worst chapters were still ahead. As decades passed, Folsom Prison did not soften. It hardened. The walls aged, but the brutality stayed the same. Executions continued. Isolation cells swallowed men for weeks. Some inmates walked out changed. Others never walked out at all. Death row became a place of dread. Prisoners sentenced to die lived in constant awareness that their time was limited. The sound of footsteps in the hall could mean their final walk. Some broke down. Others became numb. Guards learned not to look them in the eye. Escapes were rare, but attempts were deadly. Inmates who tried to run were often shot before reaching the outer fence. Their bodies were displayed as warnings. The message was clear. Folsom did not forgive mistakes. Inside, criminal legends were born. Men who survived Folsom gained reputations that followed them for life. To say you had lived through Folsom meant something on the streets. It meant you had endured hell and lived. But survival came with a price. Many inmates left emotionally broken. Violence became normal, trust disappeared. Rehabilitation was not the goal, control was. The public knew little of this until the late 1960s, when the prison briefly stepped into the spotlight. Music echoed through halls that had only known screams and silence. For one moment, the world listened to the voices of inmates. But the concert did not erase the past, it exposed it. Listeners heard songs about chains, trains, and lost freedom. What they did not hear were the names of the men who died inside, the riots, the executions, the quiet cruelty that defined everyday life. After the cameras left, Folsom returned to what it had always been. Guards, cells, control. Violence did not disappear. It adapted. New inmates arrived. Old ones left or died. The cycle continued. Investigations in later years revealed abuse that had been hidden for decades. Records showed patterns of excessive force. Former inmates spoke about punishment that crossed legal lines. Lawsuits followed. Reforms were promised. Yet fear remained. Even as conditions improved, Folsom's reputation could not be erased. Its history clung to it like a shadow. Men sent there still felt the weight of those who came before them. Every cell held stories that were never written down. Folsom Prison was no longer just a prison. It was a symbol of America's harshest justice, a place where crime met consequence in its most unforgiving form. Folsom Prison did not release its grip on men the day they walked out of its gates. For many former inmates, the prison stayed with them for life. Years later, they still remembered the sound of iron doors slamming shut, and the long nights where silence felt heavier than noise. Folsom was not just a place they had been. It was something that had shaped them. As time moved forward, the world outside the prison began to change. People started asking hard questions about punishment and justice. Was prison meant to fix people or simply break them? At Folsom, the answer had always been clear. Discipline came first. Humanity came last. Former guards later admitted that violence was once treated as routine. New officers were taught control before compassion. Silence was enforced strictly, not just to maintain order, but to remind inmates who held power. Looking weak could be dangerous. Showing sympathy could be seen as failure. Former inmates told stories that matched those admissions. They spoke of isolation cells where men lost track of days and sometimes their sanity. They described watching cellmates slowly change, becoming quieter, angrier, or empty inside. Help was rare. Punishment was constant. Survival meant adapting to fear. Families suffered as well. Visits were short and tense. Letters arrived late, censored, or not at all. Some families learned of executions only after they had already happened. Closure was never offered. Loss was treated as procedure. Yet even in such darkness, small moments of humanity survived. Inmates shared food when someone was hungry. They warned each other when trouble was coming. Some taught fellow prisoners how to read or write. These acts did not erase the cruelty, but they proved that the prison had not completely destroyed compassion. Over time, investigations exposed what had been hidden for decades. Records revealed patterns of abuse and neglect. Lawsuits followed, reforms were promised. Conditions slowly improved, but the past could not be erased. The walls still stood. The isolation cells still existed. The stories still lived in memory. Folsom became a symbol across the country. Some saw it as proof that harsh punishment worked. Others saw it as proof that cruelty only created more damage. Its name appeared in debates, documentaries, and history books, often simplified, rarely fully understood. The real reason Folsom became one of America's most feared prisons was not just because of the criminals it held. It was because of what happened after those men arrived. Justice became survival. Rehabilitation became secondary. Fear became normal. Many inmates left Folsom determined never to return. The memory alone was enough to keep them away from crime. Others struggled to live outside. Prison had taught them rules that did not work in the real world. Control and silence followed them home. Today, Folsom stands as a reminder, not just of crime, but of consequence. Not just of punishment, but of power. Its history forces one difficult question: how far should justice go before it becomes cruelty? That question is why Folsom is still feared. Not because it was famous, not because of music or legend, but because it showed what happens when punishment loses its limits. And that truth, carved into stone and memory, is what made Folsom Prison one of America's most feared jails.